When did you work at the Adams Theater?
In 1950, during the summertime, I had just graduated from high school, from Adams Memorials High School.
What is your favorite movie that played at the Adams Theater while you worked there?
The most favorite that I saw at the theater? Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I was just a little girl and my mother took me, and it was fantastic. And I still think about it. It's funny how you get attached to things. And I still remember one night, and it was in 1950, this boyfriend I had while I was in high school, and we went to see it again, and that was a lot of years later. And I can remember coming home up on Melrose Street, and the two of us are going, "We're up to see the wizard." And I still remember that. It was a lot of fun, and yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. So you kind of went to the theater like all throughout your childhood and saw movies?
That was my first movie.
Wow.
That's the first time my mother ever took me. I was young. And yes, I went quite a bit. There were Friday nights and Saturday nights. No, Friday nights and Saturdays that everybody in high school would go to. Friday night was gang night, you know, and that was when the older teenagers would just meet there, you know, accidentally meet there and sit in the back seat or you know, further down and just have a lot of fun. And that was part of it. And on Saturdays was a Western day. Now I don't know if I don't think I was in high school when that happened. I was a younger girl. In my neighborhood, we'd all go and watch on Saturdays. And we'd watch a Western and come home, and we'd go in somebody's yard and we'd act it all out again. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's amazing. So, how did the Adams Theater kind of like stimulate the activity in the community in downtown Adams?
Well, I don't know what we would have done without it, really. As a young person, I certainly couldn't imagine it without it back then, and I still can't. I just can't wait to see something going here again. And if I were young, I would probably try to get I was in the senior play in high school, and I think it's just fun for people to get together and act out different things. And if we had that opportunity to have a little group of people that wanted to do that, you know, I would just love that for Adams. I think this is wonderful that she's doing this. Mm-hmm.
So working at the theater, what kind of like friendships did you form working there?
Well, at the theater, I already was friends with my friend Joan Hamilton. Mm-hmm. And we were friends all the way through high school. And I would stop by her house with other friends one afternoon. If we didn't go to school or something, it wasn't too important to be there. It was just study or something, you know. And we'd all get together. And then we had a little bunch of friends that moved around that way and did other things. We didn't really have a lot of things to do. There was no teenage group or anything like that. back in my time, but we always kept busy. We used to, if we knitted or something, or we'd go to each other's house once a week and do those things together, and watch movies together. Everybody I was with liked movies very much, yes.
Could I ask a question? My mom said that you would spend almost all day sometimes at the theater. You would go in the afternoon and watch one movie. There'd be a short. Can you talk about that and maybe talk about Crests? How you would all gather at Crests at
Crest or Simon's, yes.
Do you remember going to the theater and spending almost all day there, seeing one movie after another? And maybe did you see newsreels?
Oh, the newsreels were really something. Even before I worked at the candy counter, I would go, like I said, we'd go Friday nights or Saturdays, and on Saturdays would be the Pathé News, and it was right after World War II. So during World War II, we saw the Pathé News, and a lot of times I would be really looking, and all the other children did too, to see if we saw our brothers or something there, you know? That was during the war.
You would have been 10 in 1942. Yeah, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So just
in it to 45, yeah, I was, yeah, my brothers, I had 2 brothers and 2 brother-in-laws in the service. So through those years, I understood that type of thing at home, you know. My mother had the flag in the window with 2 stars in it, and what they did, some of the things they did. And now with being environmental, it reminds me so much. We would, if we had any aluminum foil, we rolled it up tight, and it all went to scrap for to make bullets or something like that. And our butter was like, they'd give you a plastic bag, and in it was all white, but there was a yellow dot in it, and you just push that dot and move the bag back and forth, and there you had your margarine. It's supposed to be butter. I don't know whether it was or not, but and different things like that.
So in these times of austerity, it was probably a great treat to go to the movies. How much, do you remember how much it was to go?
Oh, a quarter.
And could you stay there all day if you wanted to on your quarter?
I think you probably could. Yeah, I don't think I did. Your mom probably did. Well, she lived right across the street.
She did,
yeah. Yeah. I had to walk up Cinder Hill.
So my mom told me stories how when she worked at the candy counter, she would sneak away after she was done with the shoppers working and see some of the movie. But she would only see the middle of every movie. She missed the beginning and the end because she would have to be at the counter. What was it like for you working at the candy counter?
I'll tell you, you know how I'm talking now? Well, I talked a lot then too.
So you would talk to everyone?
Everybody that, you know, I was always kind of a social person. And Fritzy Gregoire, who was in my class, and he was the one that ripped the tickets up at when you came in to the theater, and he had a jacket too. When Emil Willett is the one that I worked for, because he was managing the theater then, and he was a crackerjack. Everything had to be just so. You had to do your job. He didn't like it when, well, unless his wife Loretta was working with me, then she would talk too, so.
He ran a tight ship?
Well, yes, he did. He ran a tight ship. Mm-hmm. And must have just renewed it at that time, because I can remember everybody was talking about it, how they, the ladies' room upstairs, and it was beautiful. They had stairs going up, a nice lounge for the girls, and the bathrooms, and it was very nice. It was really pretty, very nice. And I remembered the marquee. It was a blue glass, and off-white in between, but more blue out in the front. And I don't know why I remember it so well, but it was pretty, it was nice. And that's how I remember it. Oh, and then it was fun one time. We had a movie playing that was Cheaper by the Dozen. It was the original one, not the one with Steve Martin, but the original one with Clifton Webb and Myrna Loy, I believe. And well, this fella that lived in town, Ed DeGear, he had a truck, and so Emil hired him, came down, and I was Mr. and Mrs. whatever the characters were at the beginning. I don't remember the names, but I remember the movie. It was very good. And we all got in the truck, a lot of kids in the back and everything, and we rode around town with signs to advertise the movie. That was fun. That was fun. Mm-hmm. And Ed DeGear ended up being the owner of our bus transportation for quite a few years.
So he started at an early age.
Yes. Yes, he must have liked doing that.
I have some photos of the theater. If you'd want to take a look at some of these and talk about them.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, both.
This is Dick Vinslet, and I think he had, he helped with, at the theater too. I don't know whether he took tickets or not. They also had a little ticket booth right out on the sidewalk, kind. That's where you bought your tickets, and then you had to walk in for a little ways. And they were always nice ladies that worked in there, and yeah, it was nice. And this is Dick Vinslet, and he ended up from a teenager going into embalming school, and he worked with Anthony McBride. Was the father still living at the time? He probably was. Frank McBride that owned it, and then Tony took over. Well, Tony was in my class, so he wasn't
Tony
there
McBride.
Then. That's right. Tony.
And Ruth McBride.
Ruth, oh yes,
And
yes.
you all chummed about.
Oh, we sure did. Tony started the Flat Earth Society in McDonald's at one point. And we were always having fun. We'd go in and just sit around at the table, and we were always just having a good time, having coffee, and every birthday we would bring a cake. One of us would bring a cake. Ruthie, she started it. Ruth McBride, she was quite a gal. And I remember that candy counter well. Slid back, we had to do it a certain way, and Emil's wife Loretta was right there to show us what to do. Yes, and here working, and I thought it was Joni, but it isn't.
She looks a little like my mom, but I think my mom took the picture.
Oh, she took the picture.
Or maybe my uncle Martin did, because he was an usher at the theater.
Yes,
He might have taken
that's
it.
right. Buddy was an usher also, and Jean Claudel, and we chummed together.
Yeah.
That's why I thought maybe it was. Of course, she looked a lot different than Martin before you knew her.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe it's my mom, but I'm not sure. And my mom had a great fondness for, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it, snow caps or nonpareils or whatever. She loved those from working at the theater. She might have saved all her money and bought those after work. What was your favorite candy?
Oh.
Do you remember?
I think I liked a Mars bar. I like coconut.
Yeah.
Or something with coconut in it.
And you know, we didn't talk about who you are. We didn't introduce you.
Oh.
So you want to say your name and how long you've lived here, and did you grew up here, where you grew up?
Well, I was Evelyn Phelps, and I grew up on Melrose Street. And it was a very nice neighborhood, and my mother and father had 10 children, and I was the very last. And they certainly did not expect me, because the ninth one was 6.5 years older than me, and I came around during the Depression. And so
1932.
In 32, yes, yes. And that's why it was so nice. That whole neighborhood was nice. When I'd walk to school, I would meet Joni, and we'd go down Cinder Hill and get to school that way. But that was high school. I did go to Notre Dame down at the foot of my hill, Forest Park Avenue, and went down Melrose, and that was my camping ground when I was really young, and I grew up there. And then I went to high school, and in my middle of the high school I had decided, or even my boyfriend at the time thought it'd be good if I went to nursing school, because his sister went. So I did. I went for about 6 months, and then I couldn't do it. You have to give nurses a lot of credit to be able to measure medicines, and back then we'd have to measure our own medicines, and I just couldn't take the pressure on all of that. Or in the ER, and also operations and that, the sterile technique. I'm a lefty, and sterile technique, just, we didn't get along at all. So, but it was very educational for me. I remember everything there that I did. And the nursing schools back then, you went for 3 years solid, and you could go home on weekends, but you had to stay there, and you worked. As soon as you got into nursing school, you were on the floor. They called you probies, and so the school got a lot of help from you, but you learned a lot. Just by that, you learned how to be with patients, and it was altogether different than it is now.
Was that in Northampton?
Pardon?
Northampton, Massachusetts?
Yes,
okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then you moved back here. Did you meet your husband here?
Well, first I went, when I left Cooley Dickinson, I had to go to work. So my friend Marlene Shea, we were together down there at Cooley Dickinson. She was going to be a nurse too, but she got out before I did. So she got me a job in Sprague Electric. So I worked for Sprague's in different types of jobs along the way, and I was even in the research center when I left. And in between that time, I did meet my husband, and we married, and he was a chicken farmer. And we had chickens, about 7,000 at a time sometimes, and then he had to go in the army, and then things changed, and my husband became, after he got through the chicken business, became the superintendent of streets in Adams. Took care of the roads, and he did a very good job of it, I think. And anyway, I raised 6 children while we were, you know, he passed away in 2001, so, and that's my story. And I
lived in Adams, and all this time
the theater
was open until '69, I think, right? The theater was open.
I went from one house from 53 Melrose to 100 Orchard Street, yes. And if I hadn't had children and they didn't move away, I probably never would have left the town of Adams. I don't know, but when we retired, well, our 25th anniversary, we did go and visit one of them, and that got us to travel, and our retirement was good. We went to California, West Virginia, Tennessee, and Ohio, and New York State. And so I've had a very, very full life and very wonderful. And I've had 17 grandchildren. I have 17. We've been very lucky. And I have 5 great-grandchildren, too. And I just think it's wonderful. And they still put up with me. And that's my story. And I love the town of Adams. I love being Catholic. I love being an Adamsite. I love being Mrs. Degen. Well, everybody likes Henry Fonda. I do too. Clark Gable, I liked him a lot. And today, you mean back then, or the new ones that are out now?
Sure, either one.
Oh, Meryl Streep, I really think she's a great actress. And I liked Katharine Hepburn. And very serious, Tom Hanks, you know, he's just wonderful. Gary Cooper was another good actor. And some of them that do their, you know, they're acting because they really love to act, and that's what they're for. And they make a living out of doing that. It isn't all for glamour or anything like that. They raise their children through it. They're lucky enough to get a spouse that can fit into that situation, I would think. But those are the few that I like. Mm-hmm.
And you kind of talked to us about how the Adams Theater, when you worked there, was kind of this hot spot for kids your age to go, and it was like a nice stimulation to the community. So what do you think will be key in the success of the revival of the Adams Theater, and how can it kind of provide that type of community nowadays?
Yina's doing a wonderful job. I'm so happy that we have someone that wants to do this. It's wonderful. And it isn't easy, because I have a lot of faith in the young people now. I think going through some of the things we've been through, we were a spoiled society, and then we got COVID, and then everybody's doesn't know how to be anymore, and children, I think the young people are grabbing hold of all these things, and that's my hope, and I certainly hope that they will bring this back. And I think in well, this is getting a little political, but I don't mean to be, but in Massachusetts, and I shouldn't say this because I'm a beneficiary of it, we're a little top-heavy with the elderly, but we're so wonderful and grateful for it, you know. But along the line, it's been harder for people to get education and no jobs when all our mills failed from the way our town started. You know, that's never going to come back. So we have to make do, so our town committees are wonderful. We don't know what they're up to all the time because they're trying so hard. And there's no young people in here to help them out. And there's no people coming in to pay taxes. My children all left the area except one daughter, you know? So that's too bad. And we got to get the young people back in here. And I think it's going to help. I think it's coming. I was with the teenagers for a short while through my life while I was raising my children. And but we don't even have a teenage center too much anymore. And there's probably not enough young people to want to do these things. But oh, if I were younger. And but she's on the right track, and I really do think there's so much to say for a lot of young people today, and we got to start seeing more of it and encouraging it.
I don't know if you remember a prank someone pulled in the theater a long time ago where they spilled a bottle of ammonia in the back and everyone had to evacuate. Do you remember? Were you there?
I was not there. But someone did tell me about that. Yes.
Some silly things kids did back in the day.
I don't recall that. Yes. Well, we used to wax windows on Halloween. I mean, that would, you know, if you wax windows today, that's a terrible thing. But, yeah, and cabbage stump night, and we, I don't know, but a lot of things are taboo today that we might have done too, you know. There weren't as many people, and there weren't as many cars. So there weren't as many cars, that's for sure. Yeah, we used to slide all the way down Melrose Street and go down Forest Park Avenue, and no cars would wouldn't be able to do that today. Yeah. And that was a fun thing too, because the town wouldn't plow. They had chain, all the cars, anybody who owned a car would have chains on their tires in the winter time. And we had a little more snow than we have right now. And the chains would pack it down. So boy, was that good sliding. That was really good sliding. And I thank you.